Over the last 100 years, not much has changed here on Ocracoke Island. Less than 1,000 people still live here, with no roads connecting this island and its residents to the rest of the state. And every summer, Ocracoke and the rest of the North Carolina coast faces the threat of a damaging, even deadly hurricane. 100 years ago, in September 1913, that threat became a reality. The storm developed in the western Atlantic in late August, and the first observations from ships came in on September 1st, when it was just 300 miles from the coast. National Park Service Ranger Chris Cabral says that left few options for coastal residents.
Back in 1913, there was no bridge to the mainland at that time, so you were unless you knew well ahead of time, you were either you're going to get on a boat, go across the sound if you really wanted to get off the island, but most people just stayed here and stuck it out.
The storm made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane on the morning of September 3rd, with significant impacts for residents of the Outer Banks.
Your livelihood would be taken away because back in 1913 there was no dune lines, so the ocean storm surge would come in at will. Today we have a dune line. That doesn't happen. Most houses probably had flooding. If you had livestock, chickens, cows, anything like that, those probably didn't make it, depending on how big the storm surge was.
When the storm hit, many of the 500 or so residents of Ocracoke took shelter in the highest places they could find, some even going to the lighthouse on the island. But with telegraph lines down and flooding observed along the coast of the state, many people feared the worst for the residents of Ocracoke. Newspapers speculated that 500 are dead in the storm. Not a living soul escaped. Everyone on the island was feared dead. But the next day, new reports came in. Losses reduced. No lives were lost on Ocracoke Island. As it turned out, much of the worst damage from the storm occurred elsewhere, like here in Washington, where the main damage was caused by flooding. Hurricane-force winds combined with the counterclockwise rotation of the storm caused a surge of water up the Pamlico River. That caused a record-setting 10 feet of flooding in this town. Even Hurricanes Fran and Floyd, which caused 9 feet of flooding, didn't break that record. One account says that here along 2nd Street, people stood on their front porches with rifles in hand, and they shot fish that washed in with the floodwaters. The Norfolk and Western Railroad trestle that ran across the Pamlico River was also destroyed by the powerful waters of the storm. All told, the storm caused 5 deaths and $60 million in losses adjusted for inflation. That's on par with the damage from Hurricane Irene back in 2011. And the similarities to Irene and some other memorable storms don't end there.
You know, if you think about Irene, which happened in 2011, even go to the Great Hurricane of 1944, those are all identical hurricanes in the fact that they came up Cape Lookout, they came through the Pamlico Sound, and with that counterclockwise motion, pushed all that water, again, flooded the river basins of the Neuse and the Tar and the Roanoke, and caused intensive flooding inland for only minimal hurricane. Irene was a Category 1. The hurricane of 1913 was a Category 1. And you say, well, that's only Category 1. But it doesn't matter here on Hatteras Island, Category 1 or Category 4, it's still, you get a ton of damage with soundside flooding and soundside storm surges as well.
And if the century since the storm is any indication, North Carolina is destined to remain a hotbed for hurricanes.
I just think it's interesting how history keeps repeating itself here in North Carolina with, if you look at a map of eastern North Carolina, there's water everywhere and it's pretty shallow. Anytime you get a lot of heavy wind over shallow water, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. And we see the patterns, as we mentioned, with the 1913, the Great Hurricane of 44, Hurricane Fran 96, Hurricane Floyd, they all came through Cape Lookout and they push right up through the sound counterclockwise, cause all sorts of trouble inland.